Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar, Easily and Quickly Migrate to Windows 11 with Liquidware. I'm Kristen McGargle, Senior Marketing Manager here at Liquidware, and we're glad that you've joined us today. This webinar is being recorded. You'll receive a link within a couple of business days to via email to view and share with a colleague. If at any point you have any questions, feel free to place them in the chat or Q&A feature, and we'll answer them as time allows. Today's webinar, we have Jason E. Smith, VP of Alliances and Product Marketing with Liquidware, and Matt Boyajian, Senior Solutions Architect and FlexApp ProfileUnity Subject Matter Expert with Liquidware. Jason, ready to kick things off?
I am. Thanks. It's great to be doing this webinar because time is ticking. We have less than a year left. I think I took the screenshot just a few days ago, but there's a new one I put on LinkedIn just a few moments ago that is even more accurate. So you might have seen that one or maybe see that one. But regardless, we are 11 months and just a few weeks away from the extended support end date of Windows 10. That is October 14th of next year. And that means you have less than a year to prepare and cut over your desktop. So you're going to be paying through the nose with Microsoft for that enhanced extended support, I believe is the way that works. And then there's also another date coming that this webinar really answers a need for, and that is the end of support for App V, which is coming in April of 2026. Now, I was speaking to the industry stalwart for App V, Tim Mangan, earlier this week, and he reminded me that App V is actually going to be in server 2025. So we might see a little bit of life beyond that. But regardless, you need to have plans in place also if you're delivering applications with App V. The world has changed and there are new technologies available. We'll touch on some of those today. So Microsoft there were some headlines years ago when Windows 10 came out that it was going to be the last OS. And of course, that did not happen. Now we have Windows 11. There's already talk of Windows 12, and they will continue to change as we go forward, as we've seen if history repeats itself, and it continues to do so. Right now, we have a quick survey for everyone to respond to. Kristen's going to put up a survey. Says your Windows 11 journey for your organization, okay? Not for your household, but for your organization, for the enterprise that you're responsible for or the company that you work for, even if you're not directly responsible for it. Please estimate how far along your organization is into making the switch from Windows 10 to Windows 11. 25%, 50%, 75%, are you 100% there? The quicker you answer this, the quicker we'll be able to go on to the next slide. Matt, do you have any guesses?
If I had to guess, I'd say most are around 0 to 25 because the majority of the organizations that I've been working with are still predominantly on Windows Server and Windows 10, and Windows 11 is really just a gleam in a lot of folks' eyes. I've seen a handful of organizations working with Windows 11 in the new PC space as well as the VDI space. But we're talking about maybe 2 out of 1,500. So the numbers are pretty small. And
Look at you. Look at you winning that one.
Good answer.
You know, and ironically, some of the first materials we wrote on Windows 10 to 11 was, I believe it was in 2021. I know in 2022, but I'm pretty sure 2021 we had some of the first solution briefs and things like that to tell the world that we were already answering this need. So when we look back at a lot of the materials that are now being asked for, including this slide deck, there's a lot of net new things in here. We've had to update the story just a little bit because some of the platforms have changed and some of the things that we call, product names for our platforms have changed. Not the story though. The main story of the way that we move from one platform to another or help customers do that has remained the same. This is very interesting that by 61% that first category there won out. So a lot of people still have a long way to go. That second number, mathematically you would think would be second, but there's a big disparity in there from 61 to 19% or 25 to 50% there. So what I'm hearing is that there's a need And that's why you probably signed up for this webinar today, so you could learn more about how to make it seamless for your end users and for your IT people to be able to do that. So Liquidware was designed from day one for change in the industry. Just as a reminder, to provide business continuity and to help you switch from platform to platform. You know, fairness in disclosure, this image was done by AI on purpose because this is like the year of the emergence of real AI that we're seeing last year and this year. In 2009, when Liquidware started, that we started as a company for a mission to help what was a big change happen in the industry. We felt like, and that was a lot of organizations starting to look at VDI as an option, not only for session hosted computing from RDSH and Citrix and others, but also as a new way to compute and deliver desktops. And we were able to do that by providing an on-ramp there, not only for that, but from XP to Windows 7. In 2010, we were there when non-persistent desktops became a real thing in the industry. When you could deliver a virtual desktop in a non-persistent way, ProfileUnity gave the ability to make persistency a reality. And we've seen solutions imitate that to make a profile stick, but we still go beyond that to unify the full parts of the profile and make that portable. Application delivery was rethought out in 2012, and we started to see new ways to deliver apps. We're going to touch on FlexApp today, how it delivers those apps separate from the base image just in time, so they can follow you during a migration. Now, Windows 10 was released in 2015. Can you believe it's been that long already? So that's 9 years ago. And ProfileUnity gave end users a zero downtime migration. At least that was the deadline, I believe, for getting over to Windows 10. COVID lockdowns forced work from anywhere, and VDI and DAS burst scaled. So we helped a lot of organizations do this. They just needed to work from home like Monday morning, and it happened on a Thursday, I believe, in early March of 2020. Many of our customers called us and said, we need to make sure that we have product your solution coverage over here in another area, or that we have ramped up and we've added a number of licenses in VDI and DAS from certain vendors. And we were able to help many of our customers have a seamless experience. Now, I know we're talking about a Windows 10 to 11 migration today, but the things that we're going to talk about today can help you anytime you have a platform migration. And there's huge in the industry, huge movements going on right now, changes from AVD, from Microsoft emerging, as well as changes historically in the last couple of years for Citrix and VMware. Have customers looking around. A lot of them are going to stick with what they have, but a lot of them are going to think about moving. And all these solutions that we talk about can help with that. And that's what happened during 2020. In 2022 and 2023, EUC is really healthy. And I'd already mentioned about Citrix and VMware, both undergoing changes in who owned those organizations. And now we know Omnissa is the new name for the VMware EUC, new name and new company. So there's a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt out there about platform switches. And then, of course, what we're talking about today, the Windows 11 migration story and the AV and the App V changes that are coming soon.
There's one more date that I'd like to throw in there that I think is pretty important, given exactly what we're talking about with 2020 and the COVID lockdowns and forcing work from home and the VDI DAS burst scaling. And that's 2021 in October is when Windows 11 got released. And I think right in the midst of COVID, having that release kind of caught a lot of people off guard, mostly because the new requirements of the TPM module, only certain processors, you got to have 8+ gigs of RAM. And there was a whole host of things that we could no longer use. That caught a lot of people off guard, but it also left a really bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. Because if you guys remember way back then, I know we're trying to block out COVID as much as we can, but if you remember back then in 2021, how easy was it to get a new laptop? It wasn't. There was a global hardware shortage. You were lucky if you could get any hardware whatsoever. So all these organizations are like, well, hey, you release something that says we have to replace 60% of our hardware. We're not ready for that yet. We can't buy new hardware, and this OS only works on new hardware. So what are we supposed to do? And it kind of put us in a rock and a hard place. But the good news is, through time and attrition, all of those things kind of make sense now. So it's still not great. People are still a little upset about how it was done, but we're no longer facing that I don't have the hardware for this operating system story.
No, it's something really good to point out. It probably hampered the initial adoption. If people could get hardware a lot quicker at that point in time, that number that we did in the survey is probably a little further along.
I would agree. Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that.
Yeah, good point. And we'll discuss how you can rapidly discover that TPM issue and if you're in compliance and compatibility here in the next few slides on one of the ones that Matt will touch on and how we can help do that. So our suite is built for this change, and I'm going to run through this real quick. Any webinar that we ever do, we know a lot of you may be familiar with Liquidware, but we always recap this to make sure you know that we offer a full solution set here. We can make the applications fully portable from any Windows platform to the next. And we've seen a lot of imitation of our FlexApp solution in the last few years, but we have led the industry with innovation in that, and also the support of, look across the bottom of this graphic, please, virtual, cloud, and physical. We've been supporting physical desktops for a few years now, even with applications that are attached, and you can go offline with FlexApp containers. So the innovation that you've seen out of that has not been matched by any other vendor. Our platform that offers that as a tool. The user and application management. Now, we used to call this space user environment management, but UEM kind of got nabbed up by unified endpoint management, and it's more applicable now to call it really what it is. We manage users and application settings and application delivery with ProfileUnity. Not only that, but the ability to have follow me data, and we'll cover that on a slide coming up here, how we can harvest the data off an endpoint before migration. ProfileUnity does that at a depth that's really uncompared in the industry as well. It works with profile on disk technologies, like our own profile disk. It works with FS logics as well to provide business continuity for that solution. So when a profile becomes corrupt, or you're tied to an OS version, and that's a limiting thing of using FS logics, ProfileUnity can bridge that gap. So they're better together and when you use it with FS logics, and you can restore a profile at a moment's notice or roll it back. Not only that, but the other parts of the user persona that matter, user data, as I said, and configuration management and delivering applications, all in a context-aware manner. And then our DEX solutions really are the next two here I'll touch on. Stratusphere UX, user experience, provides that digital user experience solution that has really been a staple in the industry for a long time. And it goes further and more in depth than anything else you can find out there. If there's anything you want to monitor and know about an endpoint, including the Windows 11 requirements, we'll touch on in a moment, Stratusphere UX can tell that to you and give you decision support to help you move forward. It says, this is what we know about the environment, how it's being used, and this is the stress, these are the stress points, etc. And we can give you that data up into almost real time within the last few seconds when it calls back and gives us that data. So that's Stratusphere UX. And then for real-time remediation, PC support and help desk, we now have CommandCTRL. It's a SaaS-based solution. That sets us apart right there. It's SaaS, totally can scale up and have it rolled out to every single user like within the hour. And we have licenses on demand. So if something happens and you need to add licenses really quickly, you can do that. So it's all turnkey. There's nothing to set up on-prem. Reach out and touch someone. It has innovations and features in there that can also help you with Windows 11 migrations. We have a slide in here that'll touch on that. So once you roll out Windows 11, you start getting some PC help desk calls. That's your go-to solution there as well. So let me talk about and get back to Windows 10 to 11 migrations and how we do this. We really leverage UNC FilePath or cloud staging, either one, to be able to take what is known, a good known user persona. And I say that because it goes beyond the user profile. ProfileUnity unifies far more than the profile. It's where the product name comes from. It unifies the data portion of this. It unifies the user profile in a way that writes delta changes, so it doesn't have a big impact at log on in a normal logon. And it also helps you deliver context-aware settings to desktops, no matter where the user is and if they've logged on even to a greenfield environment. And you'll see that in the demonstration today. So we leverage cloud data points or UNC file paths to be able to store that data up there in a smart profile type of way, not the caches of profiles and all the things that bloat profiles, but really does that and allows you to pull it back down. And if you look at this graphic, it really illustrates this point better than I can orally say it really here. Really, if you look at on the left side, you have legacy Windows desktops. And that can be any virtual, physical, or cloud desktop. And you're about to undergo a migration, not only to Windows 10 to 11, like we're talking about today, but maybe a platform shift. Go ahead in your mind and skip way over to the right. Maybe you're moving platforms. So this is the same process. When the user logs off back over on the left, we're harvesting out the smart profile from that machine that is going to be instantly universal to another version of Windows, in this case, Windows 11. We're able to also harvest out other things that make that thing beyond the profile, beyond those desktops, beyond the profile itself, the user-authored data, and save that up to a directory. And perhaps you want that in OneDrive, and you want to put in best practices. Let's harvest out the documents area, the pictures area. Let's not save anything on hard drives anymore. And let's get this into a new way of managing it, a modern way of managing it, and let's sync the data over. We have a sync engine built in, the ProfileUnity, that'll sync all that data over, make sure it's in the user's one cloud area, OneDrive area. And then in the future, when they save things, it will be saved to their OneDrive area. And it really decouples the physical desktop or the persistent desktop or even the virtual desktop that's been managed differently and does this. And along the way, even before that, Stratusphere can come in and assess those desktops, how they've been used today, so you can size them appropriately. Maybe you're going to desktops in the cloud. And you can also baseline the user experience to those environments. So when you move that first test group over, you can prove and give that decision support back over to your management that this is indeed going to be successful when we do this at scale in the next coming days, weeks, or months. We leverage cloud data points or UNC file paths, either way, to do this staging. And then it's all brought back in at first login. So when the user first logs in, could be virtual, physical, or cloud desktop, any of those that you see there on the right. Maybe you're doing a platform shift and you're sticking with Windows 10 for some reason. You should be going to Windows 11 at this point, but maybe there's some reason that you think you might skip straight to 12 or something like that. We're hearing of that even. But even if you're doing a platform shift, that user is going to receive their user profile, access to their user authored data that used to be on their hard drive. They're going to receive their applications, because once you've delivered those applications with FlexApp, they simply work in the new environment. There's no repackaging. And you're going to be able to, again, run a user experience report and do that baseline comparison and show that it is indeed a better desktop, so you can scale this process going forward. And this in place will help you through any of those big crisis points that do crop up in the industry. God forbid another CrowdStrike happens, right? But if you'd had our solution in place during CrowdStrike, we couldn't have prevented it, but we could have helped you get back up and running very quickly, because all of the user real estate and applications are going to come back down to any new endpoint, even if you had to reimage that same endpoint and get the user back up and running. Matt, he'll take the next few slides to talk about the Windows Profile Challenge and why this doesn't simply just work without ProfileUnity.
So what Jason's been talking about for the last few minutes sounds a little bit like black magic, doesn't it? Because there really isn't any other company in the world that goes out and says, hey, we don't care about your version of Windows. We can instantly migrate between whatever versions you want. And even Microsoft's doesn't have a solution like this. They rely on something called the USMT, the User State Migration Tool. And I'm sure that there's more than a few of you right now who, at the very mention of that name, are quivering and hiding under your desk, because the USMT is painful. It basically says that you have to go and take this series of PowerShell scripts and you have to customize them for your organization and your software and say, I want to capture these things. I want to capture my software settings, my printer settings, and all this other great stuff. And what we found is it usually takes a Fortune 500 company weeks to months just to program the thing. And then the process is doubly painful when you actually have to use it, because in order to back up and restore somebody's system for Windows 10 to Windows 11 migration, you need to send a technician out to the machine, run the user state migration tool, which can take a couple hours to run, and you can't use your computer during that time. And then afterwards, we're going to re-image your machine instantly, because otherwise we could miss any new data you create. And then we have to run the user state migration tool again to copy your data down there. So basically you have no access to your machine for a day. So the employee's out of commission for a day, the user's out of commission for a day, the machine's out of commission for a day, and that's if the whole process works correctly, which it doesn't always do. So what are we doing that's different? So I'm going to geek out a little bit. I hope you guys will just allow me. And what you have to understand is the Windows profile has really been around since Windows NT 3.5.1, which is at this point like 30 years old. The profile hasn't really changed all that much in that point in time. But the really funny thing is if you take a modern version of Windows like Windows 11 and an older version of Windows like Windows 10, or really anything else, if you take that older version of Windows profile and simply copy it from point A to point B, it will blue screen or black screen that OS in a very spectacular manner. It will literally just kill it. And what we found is if you start taking a look at the differences between the Windows profiles over the years, 95% of it is generic. It can apply to any version of Windows you want, but there is that 5% that will go and brick an operating system very quickly and quite spectacularly. So what we've done is we harvest a number of engines in order to make sure that the profile stays agnostic, hardened, and fault tolerant. So the way that we do this is we first utilize what we call the portability engine. That's what you're seeing on the screen right now. And the portability engine will go through your profile and say, what I want to go after is the core of the profile. I don't want the caches. So Chrome, IE, Firefox, Java caches, I don't want those. But what I do want is the core of your profile that makes all your stuff work. And as Jason mentioned, we've been doing this for a very long time. We've had almost 24 years to get this right. So as a result, this is a very mature, very well-versed process. So the engine will go and talk to places like your registry and your app data. And the first thing we do is we run everything through a corruption detection engine to make sure that none of this data is actually bad. And then we go through a process of compression. We use CRC, cyclic redundancy check, to make sure that your data is safe. We also use MD5 hashing to make sure that your data is double safe. And then we also have the ability to go and make backup copies or incremental copies of this profile. Because if the user makes a mistake, which users are apt to do, I want to be able to restore part of their profile and not the whole thing. And what's really cool about this process is you can utilize this at any point. So Jason was just talking about what happened during that awful CrowdStrike outage. With this process, I log you into any machine and it simply just works. A server, a workstation, Windows 10, Windows 11, 2016, 2019, 2022, AVD, WBD, Win365, Citrix, we do not care. We are Switzerland. So you simply log in and all your stuff is there. Next slide, please.
Just a point about this slide you and I spoke about last week, because we've updated some of our papers, and you may see a different profile version down there at the end, because there's industry disagreement even in here. If you go looking at what Microsoft's written, sometimes you might even see conflicting things in there of something about a version 7 or version 8 profile.
Version 8, yeah.
Yeah, and you see those asterisks down there. That was the attempt to do that here, but this is the one we're sticking with today for the explanation. But if you're thinking or you've heard about a version 7 or 8 profile, no worries. We do know and realize those changes down there, and there's nuances in there, and there's already, like I said, some disagreement in the industry on what those are called.
Right. It's not just us, Jason. It's pretty much a global thing. And Microsoft has not made this easy, because realistically, every single time we have a new version of Windows, we have a new profile. And we've even seen that split up between different versions of Windows, like Windows 10 and Windows XP actually split up for a while there too. So it's a mess. It's an absolute quagmire. So being able to draw on the 20 plus years of experience we have is huge in making all this stuff work properly.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about the next piece of this is an assessment. So one of the things that we kind of were talking about at the beginning of this is hardware and the implications of hardware with a Windows 10 to Windows 11 migrations. And I know this has caught a lot of you flat-footed because there's a number of very arcane requirements when it comes to the hardware. So for example, a certain Ryzen processor might be supported while a previous generation will not. Or I might have an 8th generation Intel i7 or even an i9 CPU, which is in all reality a really powerful system, that's not supported. Or we might have a system that has an older version of TPM and that's not supported. So how do we make heads or tails of this? Well, the easiest way is to perform an assessment. So we have a tool called Stratusphere UX. That is our DEX and user experience platform. And the idea behind it is that I can put an ultra-light agent on your systems that consumes extremely low resources. And I can pull information on not only your user experience, not only your hardware, but your application consumption. So you can reduce those application licenses. If a user hasn't used something like AutoCAD in the last 2 years, we can go and call them on that. We can understand what's going on with user experience in terms of what your consumption is. But most importantly, for the case of what we're doing here, I understand everything about your environment. So I know, is the CPU supported? Do you have the proper amount of cores? Do you have the correct amount of hard drive space? Do you have a decent GPU that we can utilize? What's going on with your BIOS TPM details? Which version of TPM do you have? Do you support Windows 11 in place? Do I need to do a refresh? Everything that really is concerning about this entire process, we've distilled down to a single report. So you can install Stratusphere UX, run the report, get the information you need, and immediately know which machines need to get recycled and which machines need to go and get that Windows 11 upgrade. Now, remember, just because a machine doesn't support Windows 11 doesn't mean it's useless. So one of our partners, iGel, they make thin client conversions, and those machines would still be supported by them. So if you're looking at leveraging those systems as modern thin clients to connect into VDI, to connect into cloud, to connect into a hybrid environment, that is still a great use case for them. And again, that's something we can help you through as well. Next slide, please. So what else do we want to do? We want to do things like inventory of application usage. Well, this is kind of a double-edged sword because, of course, we want to talk about FlexApp. But the application usage does a couple of different things for me, as I mentioned before. First, it tells me, how can I recoup my licensing costs? And usually what we find is whenever we put out something like this in the scope of a Stratusphere assessment, this usually pays for the assessment and then some. Because as organizations, we're spending millions of dollars on software costs every single year. And we know that just because someone has a piece of software installed doesn't necessarily mean they use it. So I can literally put a metric out there that says, hey, look, if you haven't used this piece of software in 3 months, 6 months, a year, we're going to rescind your license and pull that back. So that way, when we recoup our licensing costs, we can say, hey, we just saved $2, $3, $4 million as a result of just using this tool to say, I want to migrate from Windows 10 to 11. There's a host of other things that you can get as a result. Jason?
Thanks, Matt. I'm going to take us through that staging process that we spoke about a moment ago. In the next few slides, I'll go through application staging, the environment staging, and then how we do the user-authored data harvesting. Some of the stuff I explained on that previous slide, so I'll hurry through a couple of these since I've already more or less recapped it. But with FlexApp, when you package an application and we're attaching applications, that's how we're delivering them very, very quickly. Is we only attach the application. It's not really installed, but yet has a high compatibility rate. You only have to package it once. If the vendor supports other OS versions, the server versions, Windows 10, Windows 11, that application is most assuredly going to work directly after the user logs onto the new platform, and you won't have to repackage it. It'll just simply come in and their desktop will appear and they'll be off and running, just like you'll see in the Greenfield demo today. Another reason why organizations use this is that they reduce the number of desktop image designs, whether it be for physical desktops, because you still have an image design for those, or virtual or session hosted desktops, you can greatly reduce the number of images. Rely on a desktop image that's built out with the OS in it, all the applications that every user needs. For example, you might want to put Microsoft Office in it. We could attach that, but most of the times, if all users are going to use it, you probably want to put that in the base image, and then allow FlexApp to deliver all the applications on a departmental basis, or even on an enterprise-wide basis, things that you don't want in the base image. And this is going to let those applications come in separate and aside from the OS itself. We have a very high degree of compatibility with this because we use a filter driver that makes the application look like it is indeed natively installed, and it looks like it's all over the OS when it's not. You're basically turning on the application and turning off the application. The container it resides in usually is a VHDX container, and that it has everything needed to make the application work once it's turned on in the environment and compatible with all other applications in the environment, no matter what order it was packaged in. So it provides you a seamless way to get those applications in. We have compatibility with other testing and validation vendors, including the ones that you see here today. So it allows you to stage out those applications and have them ready to go at a moment's notice, or a continued way of delivering them in any environment. ProfileUnity, I described how it works a moment ago, but in short, again, what happens is when the user logs off the very first log off time, that profile is harvested and it's ready to go already at the very next login, between operating system versions or between platforms. So on-prem, the cloud, DAS, does not matter. As long as the user is logging into Windows, you hit the same AD or AAD, that user is going to receive that profile pulled back down from the UNC path or the cloud path, and they will be off and running in seconds, even across OS versions. So it's a smart profile that gets harvested. A lot of people say, well, I'll just rip and replace. Well, you typically tend to make users pretty mad when you do that. When they don't have their profile, their desktop wallpaper, and all the other things that they're used to, it can really hamper how they look at IT, how they look at the help desk, and it also can hamper user productivity. So when we're harvesting a smart profile, you're not going to end up with a lot of bloat that's not needed, that causes long login times. It really ends the migration for the end user, because when they log into that next desktop, they're able to say, well, how is this much different? Except now I do recognize it must be Windows 11, but I'm seeing all the things that are familiar here, even all the way down to my Outlook signature and everything else, and I'm off and running. Like I said earlier, our profile solution with portability of the profile is fully compatible with FSLogix. If you do use something like FSLogix or our own profile disk, our portability engine will end up keeping those profile containers, that's one per OS version, will end up keeping them in sync on a delta change basis. Not the full profile, but only a pin to that profile at most every login going forward. I say most every login because what happens if the FSLogix profile becomes corrupt and you reset it, then the entire profile comes back down. That'll take a few more seconds to bring it down, but regardless, the user's happy and they're off and running. You can roll back the profiles, and again, you can store those on UNC file paths or any popular cloud object-based storage. User authored data. Now, some organizations or vendors might talk about how they harvest users or how they migrate users. We are really harvesting the user authored data there. We're not using user state migration tool or something like that from Microsoft. What we're doing is we're looking at all the common places where they would have saved data, such as documents, pictures, and all those common files that they have and are easily able to save data to in their old Windows environment. And in that first login of running ProfileUnity in the existing legacy environment, the environment that's going to be legacy, we will start a synchronization engine running in the background. That's very important because now the user's not impacted. They can go about their day. They can do whatever they want to. At the very next login, We will see if there's been any changes while we were running in the background, because they might have used some files that could have otherwise been in use, right? And we didn't get a chance to move those around. And we will, during the login process, move those 1 or 2 files over, and we will flip the direction of the folder redirection of those key shell folders to now be wherever you've determined those to be. A lot of times, like I said, those are into their OneDrive folder, and now you've synced them in the cloud, and they will have all that data forevermore following them, no matter where they go. And we actually give you an inventory report of when this process has happened for each individual user, so you know this is complete for them before you flip them over to their new desktop. And then they're fully productive from day one with everything that they need. This is a little screen capture of that area where we do that. Basically, we're saying run the automatic data harvesting for no matter where they log on to. In this case, it's usually the legacy Windows 10 environment. And what are we going to do? In this one, we're going to look at the desktop folder, and we're going to redirect it to a new file path. And you have all those sync engines that are in there that can sync it to a new location. In this case, you could, like in the example I cited, you'd be syncing it to the place that OneDrive is saved locally. Then the OneDrive engine's going to pick up, and it's going to move those to the cloud. And then you can even limit the bandwidth, and that's important because you don't want to turn this on with unlimited bandwidth for thousands of users for the network. So we even do that to where it won't cripple your network by moving all those files at once for thousands of users.
Hey, Jason, mind if I just jump in real quick on the previous
Sure.
slide? So one thing I want to add, and you guys have ever worked with this before, you know that user shell folders kind of permeate the entire operating system because you have things like desktop and downloads and documents and things like that. But I can't tell you how many times a customer has come to me and said, hey, Matt, we have a custom directory that we use for something. We might use it for shortcuts, or we might use it for an application that we have homegrown, or just maybe some things we've built over the years. And is there any way for us to migrate that folder to a network share, or migrate that data to a UNC path or a cloud path? And until recent versions of ProfileUnity, this was not possible. But what's really cool is in our later versions of ProfileUnity, you can do this. You can actually say, I want to create a folder to be a shell folder and migrate that to the network. So if you have old weird stuff that you just can't get rid of, that your organization really depends on, we can help you with those migrations as well. Really, really cool functions that we've added in later years.
Yeah, and that's great to point out, and something I don't think I even knew, because I'm a technical marketing guy, so that's great for me to even know. But I do want to point out, we don't scrub the entire hard drive for doc files, you know, and in that way, user state migration tool does that, and it's a big hit and miss tool otherwise. So we're looking at we're usually looking at common file paths, or if you specify a path like Matt said. So maybe you had a best practices where you said user created data should always go in this folder. We can even take that into account now, right? That's what you're saying.
Yep, that's one of the ways we can do it. But if it exists outside of those normal folders, we can do that too. It really is completely customizable, but not a headache to do so. In fact, just about every single thing you can do inside of the ProfileUnity console, you can do in 5 clicks.
Great. I'm going to recap, and then we'll see the demo. So any successful migration, we would say assess for what you have today, and you can do that with our Stratusphere solution. Legacy desktops, you can see how to right size that new environment, make recommendations for decision support forward, know what machines are able to go to Windows 11, for example. So you know which ones you need to replace or repurpose with something like a Stratodesk or iGel or Tenzig or anything else. And then leave no mission critical data behind. Ensure that user author data is being moved over. Prepare your base image and do your application strategy and planning accordingly, and decide whether, you know, what apps should go in the base image, which apps should be delivered with FlexApp or with MSIX or with anything else that you have at your disposal, because it's great to have multiple things there to be able to deliver apps in the way that you know they need to go. FlexApp's highly compatible, but there's still use cases for using MSIX and other things to move data over, to move applications over. Ensure that the user data availability is there, so you have user authored data that's been harvested out, and that it's backed up and ready to go, and that the folder redirections are in place. And then you can remember you baselined or if you're a Stratusphere customer, you've baselined all this and you can ensure that the quality experience is there going forward. And now that you have possibly at your disposal our new command control solution to be able to reach out and touch and help support your users on that day zero when you cut over. And maybe you've got an executive that calls and says, where's my desktop wallpaper? Why are all these icons in the middle of my toolbar instead of over in the left? And where did my search button go? And all those important things. You have command control at your disposal to be able to help do that, maybe to make a few Windows tweaks for individual people that are very important in your organization.
That never happens. Executives are always so even-headed.
And apologies to any executives or C-levels that we have. No harm meant. You know the solution is going to be very valuable for your entire organization. Matt, would you show us a demo today, please?
Absolutely.
Sure.
So we're going to go play around with a whole bunch of stuff, but the first thing we're going to do is we're going to jump into my environment, which is a hodgepodge of just about every version of Windows you could possibly imagine. But we're going to start off with the mainstay, our favorite, your favorite, the most popular operating system in the world right now, Windows 10. So inside of my Windows 10 environment, which I've been using for almost 10 years now, I've got a lot of stuff. And I mean, just massive amounts of customization that's been following me around for years and years. So let's talk about that real quick. What do I have? So first of all, I've got my desktop wallpaper, which I have and I like, and I've got all my stuff on my desktop, which are the icons that I care. And just like the executive that Jason mentioned before, I like all my stuff in one place too. I like to make sure it's exactly where it's supposed to be. So to that end, I also want to be able to rely on the things that I've been building up over these years. So for example, if I go into places like my documents or my desktop, you're going to find gigs and gigs and gigs of stuff that I've been accruing for a long time. And I want to keep this data. This is all mission critical data for me. But what's also important is all the things that are going on behind the scenes. So when I start digging around inside of the registry, all these things that are in places like HK Current Users software, all these things matter to me, even if I don't realize how much they matter to me, because these are all my application configurations and my Outlook signatures and all the things that I've been setting up over the last 10 years are here. So if I want to be productive when I move into Windows 11, it would be a really good idea if I could pull all that information into the environment and be able to do that in an easy, seamless way by leaving the junk behind, but keeping the important things that we do. So how do we do that? Well, the first thing we do is we install ProfileUnity onto your systems. And it's a pretty easy process. You deploy a ProfileUnity console, you're going to set up a single AD GPO, and all those machines just get ProfileUnity. And now they're going to be synchronizing your profile either to the cloud or to a UNC path. In this case, I've chosen a UNC path. And in fact, if I navigate to it, so let's go to it right now, and it's in, for example, this area here, it's in ProfileUnity, and then we have this area called Profiles, and then we have me, Matt. So here's my directory that essentially quantifies my profile across all the different versions of Windows that I'm running. And we can see here that I have a profile disk, which is a VHDX that binds to my OS if I'm non-persistent, for example. This is very similar to FSLogix. But the star of the show that we have here is really the portability engine. The portability engine, this is what allows me to migrate between versions of Windows. This is what does all the compression, the CRC, the MD5, the corruption detection. And this is what makes sure, even if I'm using 5 different versions of Windows, that everything goes and works smoothly. So you can see all this stuff in the root. This is the core of my profile that's generic. So this is things like application settings in the registry and third-party application data settings and my certificates, my Edge Chromium settings, and my Google Chrome settings, my cookies, my favorites, my history, my Maddle accounts, my Mozilla Firefox stuff. All of these things are paramount to the user because I need all of them to function in terms of what I do every single day. And yeah, there are some applications that do cloud synchronization, and there's some things that grab the stuff that I want, but nothing gets everything. And certainly nothing gets everything out of the box. So in addition to this, I also have FlexApp enabled, which Jason's been talking about as kind of a really nice to have with this whole migration platform. And what's nice is I have roughly 110 applications that have come along for the ride as part of this migration. So if I could just grab this window here, there we go. We can see all the applications I have that are available via FlexApp are identified with this parentheses, FlexApp parentheses, and there's a lot here. So in fact, there's a lot of applications that have weird stuff going on, device drivers, system services, COM plus DCOM. We don't care. If they're in-house written applications, if they're big, heavy, difficult applications, I have some customers who run 600-700 gigabytes worth of applications because they have to do 4 or 5 different versions of Revit and Rhino all at the same time. We don't care. All of those things seamlessly come along for the ride. So what do I have to do as the user to migrate to my Windows 11 machine? So normally we do USMT. We've already described the process. It's massively painful. But in this scenario, all I have to do is give you a new PC or reimage the one you have. And then all you have to do is log in. That's it. Literally just type in your username and password, and all of your things will come down. So I'm just going to connect into this system. And this is the first time it's seeing me, so we're going to let it go and say hello. So I'm going to type in my username, type in my password, and then we see the ProfileUnity splash screen. So this is first pulling in those portability settings, but it's also doing FlexApp on top of that. And then on top of that, it's also doing that whole migration piece with documents and everything else. And uh-oh, my screen just went black. What's going on here? Well, this is Windows 11 being Windows 11, and it's going to ask me a series of security questions. So these are things we can automate in the ProfileUnity engine, by the way. So if you don't want your users to have to answer the questions on location-based data and inking and typing and tailored experiences and advertising ID, if you don't want them to answer these questions, that's okay. We can inject the registry keys for you to make sure that they don't have to. But let's look at the end result. What just happened? I have, hey, look, all my stuff is in exactly the same place. Some of these things have updated icons because they're the new Windows 11 version of it. But all my stuff is here, and all of my stuff is where I expect it to be. So aside from the fact that I have a new UI that I have to get used to, nothing else is new to me. All the things that I've configured inside of Windows Explorer, all of my icon sets, all of the things that I did with my icons, my applications, my registry, my documents, and then, of course, also my applications simply just came along for the ride. So if you've ever heard me talk about ProfileUnity and FlexApp, you'll hear me use the term, just enter your username, just enter your password, because that's really all we require in order for all this stuff to seamlessly just work. But that kind of addresses a small part of this. The bigger part of this is, how do you do it? How do you actually get to a point where I can automatically harvest a user profile and just get down to type in your password and you, Mr. User, will be okay? Well, the process is really quite simple because it all starts off with the ProfileUnity console. And as I mentioned before, it's basically just a Windows server. You're going to drop it on your network. There's a whole host of questions that you're going to ask, and those questions will set the entire product up for you, including the 20 plus years of best practices that we've built in to this whole migration philosophy. So how long does this take to do? Well, let's find out. So the first thing I want to do is I want to click Create on a new configuration, and I want to choose a guided configuration. And we have a series of libraries that will help you, and each one of these is designed to do a migration. So if I want to do a migration with Azure Blob or Google Cloud or S3 or a user UNC path, all I have to do is select that. And then we will ask you a series of basic questions, like, for example, where do you want to store these user profiles while we're doing the migration? Hey, I mentioned that we need an AD GPO in order to fire this off. Which organizational unit would you like me to go and create that GPO for you? So we do all the heavy lifting, including the GPO creation. And then it says, well, we have an agent that we're going to use to make sure that these machines can get ProfileUnity. Where do you want me to store that agent? And the netlog on share being a replicated path is the easiest way. And that's it. That's the only thing I have to do in order to get a migration going, because all of these rules, all of these complex data sets that work with many different versions of Windows and make sure that migrations and multi-solutions all work the way they're supposed to, it's all built in. In fact, we do a lot of little things to make sure that you're not going to get in trouble. So like when I go and move your documents from a local path to a UNC path, I'm going to eliminate the security warning that says, hey, are you sure you want to do this? Because it's your data. Yes, of course, I'm sure I want to do this. We're going to do things like automatically make available that synchronization engine that Jason was talking about earlier in any way that you want for any folder that you want inside of your environment. And when I said everything inside of the modules that we have here takes 5 clicks or less, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Because if I want to introduce automation as part of your migration and say, hey, you know what? In addition to doing all this stuff for you, now I'm also going to take care of any additional printers that you might want to have added. Well, all these things only take a handful of clicks. So it's 5 clicks or less, and I can go and deploy printers to the accounting group on top of the things that they've done. So it's not just about seamlessly and easily migrating all your data. It's not just about making all these applications instantly available for where you go. It's about automating the user experience to make their lives easier so they're not calling the help desk, so everything runs just a little bit smoother. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of my demo. I'm going to turn things back over to Mr. Smith to close us out.
Great demo. I was recapping with some people the other day the moment in time we realized that we could migrate a profile. It goes back to about 2007 or so, a year or two before even Liquidware. And my business partner and I were looking at the need to support profiles in the industry, and we wanted to add it to a solution that we had that was called ScriptStart at the time, and it became later ProfileUnity. But when we did the test from XP to 7, we were like, oh my gosh, the profile just came over. It went in the right places, and we had to modify a few more things in there, and then we've built in so many migration things since that time. But that's when we knew that a side effect of what we had there was migration. And what Matt just showed you is that this product, this solution can do so much more than migrations. It was really built to automate a lot of the way that you manage your users and you manage your applications now with in Windows. So got just a few more slides, and I'm going to show you how you can actually get paid $25 for 10 minutes of your time here in just a moment. As I click forward for those, command control, we mentioned this a couple of times. We want to show the interface right now that shows you how this real-time monitoring and support solution that's SaaS-based can be used for that kit glove type approach for migrations or on day 0, being able to provide that non-intrusive support and to be able to shadow users and make those final adjustments on that day when you start getting a few help desk calls, mainly because users are not used to the interface. Matt, would you like to describe some of the things here in command control?
Absolutely. So the easiest way to describe command control is it's like task manager on steroids. And what's great about it is even if you're brand new to troubleshooting a machine, this can automatically highlight any trouble spots for you. So if there's a problem with memory consumption or disk consumption or CPU consumption, it'll immediately highlight it in red to say, hey, this is wrong. You need to go and take a look at this. There's also a whole bunch of really amazing tools built into this that we would like to have within our tool set. So in other words, when we were building command control, we asked all of our engineers and all of our customers, hey, give us a wish list of all the things you want inside of a troubleshooting tool. So we said, hey, I want to be able to create a speed test, or I want to be able to instantly ping a machine or trace route a certain link or get a GP result or find out what's going on with the IP config. All of those things are built in. In addition to that, there's also artificial intelligence built in, which I know we've heard enough about AI, but this has a real good use case to it, which is when you're going through all of the individual executables, if you click on the AI icon, we will teach you what that process is and is it supposed to be where. So if you're concerned when you're looking at something of, is this malware, is this spyware, is this just a game, what is this random exe, click on it and we will tell you exactly what it is without you having to go and Google something. In addition to this, you can go and remote control a PC, you can control services, you can start them, stop them, restart them, log a user out, reboot the machine. You have triggers, which means you can say, if I find this condition, go and alert me. And most importantly, you have an entire scripting engine and library. So anything that you could want to execute on a machine, from software inventory to Wi-Fi control to cleaning up things when the disk gets full, all of those things are literally at your fingertips.
Thanks. And really, you might have seen some similar solutions out in the market, but let me recap some of the innovations in here. We have a DVR in here. Basically, somebody calls and says, well, you weren't able to call me back. It's not happening now. Well, you can go back in time. You can see all this telemetry showing on this screen. All you do is you drag a little timeline back. Maybe before they went to lunch or whatever, that's when it was occurring, and you'll start to see it light up what was causing the root cause of their degradation in performance, for example. So that's something we call the DVR. We have protocol mirroring and the ability to switch So if you'll look, when we're attached to this machine that you see at the top of the screen, you're able to switch to any other machine that they have in the environment. So maybe they're making some kind of complaint about their session hosted environment, and you say, well, it looks like it's running fine to me. And then you start to say, well, how are you connected? And you don't really even have to ask that question because you can see they're logged onto another machine. You can instantly switch Command Control to look at the telemetry of that machine, and you may see their Wi-Fi access point, and their Wi-Fi access is degraded, and maybe that's one of the causes of their degradation in performance. So that's just a couple of the ways. Matt already touched on the AI part that we've already got integrated in here on the processes. So give Command Control a look. There's other videos out there that you can find on our website that give you a more comprehensive demonstration of it. I want to mention a few other things. I'm going to show you how you can trial FlexApp really easily with our FlexApp 1 format, and also make that $25 in 10 minutes. So we have a community out here on Slack. You can scan this QR code, you'll land there, and you can join our Slack community that has other peers that you can reach out to in the industry and see how they're handling their migrations. And you can also get a feel for how our solutions out there can be used in for use cases or for vertical reasons out there in the industry, including migrations. And then we have a white paper out there that goes into depth on how ProfileUnity works. And there's a mention in there also of FlexApp in there. So you can check out the white paper. This was recently updated in the last 10 days. We updated it, like I said, a few years ago when Windows 11 first came on the scene, but there's been industry changes in there and a few other things. So there's been some updates in this white paper. So if you've seen it before, it's worth another good read for the profile changes that are in there and today's challenges. And you can get to that by scanning that QR code on your phone, bookmarking it too if you wish. This webinar will be available as a recording afterwards. And we've got a couple questions I'll get to in a moment. But finally, you can trial FlexApp 1 containers without spinning up any infrastructure. We have 8 FlexApp 1 containers that you can double click and launch on your Windows desktop right now. And I realize this is also a barcode right here, but you can bookmark it in Chrome or whatever you're using. You'll see that same barcode if you're sharing them on your desktop. And you'll land on this page, and you can give us one simple thing, your email, which we already have because you joined today's webinar, right? And you'll be able to download those FlexApp 1 files and get a taste of how that works in your environment. They're FlexApp 1, meaning they're self-contained. You're downloading a VHDX container that's an executable. When you double click on it, it'll ask you 1 or 2 simple questions. And if Windows Defender blocks it, you might have to whitelist something, but otherwise it's going to launch that application straight away. Slack is one of the ones you can test out. Teams is another one you can test out. A real fun one is Pinball that used to be in, what was it, Matt? Windows 98?
Yeah.
95. And we're not doing any remediation. That solution just works across all Windows operating system environments. It's not an isolated. Yeah.
It's most definitely worth a try. If you've never seen this work before on any system, anything that doesn't have the app on it, you double click and then the app is just there. It really is as easy as Jason's making it seem.
Yep. And if you don't want the cumbersome part of the phone QR code and all that, you can we can put a URL link here in the chat window here in a moment when we go to the question and answers, or you can do a simple Bing or Google search for try FlexApp 1 over a cup of coffee, and you'll end on that page that I'm discussing. All right, back to the questions. And we had 1 or 2 come in. Actually, here's how to make that $25, and then we'll get to the questions. We are seeking quick reviews on Gartner Peer Insights. You can make $25 right now for 10 minutes of your time. It's an Amazon gift card that you'll get. It literally takes about 10 minutes. I tried this for a marketing software product the other day, had nothing to do with Liquidware, to see how long it would take because we can't review our own products. That's the way it works. If you are familiar with these key products out there, we don't have Command Control out there yet, but you can scan these QR codes, and you can do this on your phone. Fill out a quick survey of what you think of the solution, even if you've seen it demonstrated, right, as you did today. and you can give a quick review, and you'll get a $25 gift card for the review that you submit. So any of those QR codes will land you on those 3 pages, and you can get those as well. I'm going to leave this slide up so you'll have access to the QR codes while we do the Q&As. We had one Q&A come in, one question come in earlier that Matt answered, but I thought it was worth recapping for the entire audience, and it was data harvesting. I kept speaking about how that could go to OneDrive and sync to your OneDrive folder, and then OneDrive would pick up the engine. So that's not a requirement. OneDrive is not a requirement. You can sync it anywhere you want to go. You can sync it to a UNC file path or a cloud file path, or to maybe you have a cloud-based storage that is specific for your organization. The way that those generally work is there's a local file that is syncing to a cloud engine, right? In the case of OneDrive, and Dropbox and some of the other ones work similar. Even some of the ones that are internal only and highly secure environments work similar, and you can do that. You can also sync it just to a UNC file path. If you're in a highly secure area, I understand you might not have access to cloud storage, but my example was just a good, easy way that a lot of our customers tend to be doing is relying on OneDrive, because they have Microsoft licenses to enable them to do that. Kristen, do you see any other questions?
Yes, I have a couple of questions that came in. Can I copy an Logix disk from Windows 10 to migrate to Windows 11?
You can, but the results are not fun. So usually what winds up happening when you have a FS Logix disk that goes straight from Windows 10 to Windows 11 is it doesn't blue screen, it black screens it. So what winds up happening is you log in, the disk loads, you get a black screen, and it just hangs there. Every once out of about 10 or 15 logins, you will get to a quote desktop, but it won't have a start menu. It won't have your documents. It won't have anything. It'll just literally be a blank piece of wallpaper. So it's pretty catastrophic to watch something like that happen.
Okay, thanks. I have another one that came in here. I have Omnissa. Can I use that to migrate to Windows 11?
That's another good one. So unfortunately, Omnissa's not there yet. They might be in the next few years, but they're definitely going to miss out on the Windows 10 to Windows 11 migration.
Yep.
They are only set up to keep your data in your current operating system. If you move to a new version of Windows, you will have to leave all that OS information behind, because they don't have a way of segregating out what we've built into ProfileUnity, which is what's compatible with the OS versus what's not compatible with the OS. And Omnissa, whatever version you're on, that's what version you stay with.
Yep. So the other part of that is, I guess, if the question meant, do we also support Omnissa's Horizon, VMware Horizon, formerly VMware Horizon? Yes, we do, and we have many customers that run us instead of Omnissa's DEM solution.
Mm-hmm.
And DEM is solution. Their solution is similar in many ways to ProfileUnity, but most customers with Horizon are used to having that bundled in, and that licensing a lot of times is tied to your Horizon licensing. So the net benefits is you're going to find features first and foremost that you won't find in their solution, which may be a good one, but ProfileUnity is built to work across virtual physical cloud in any Windows platform, even these emerging platforms such as WorkSpot and Aporto, and some of these that you see popping up that you might be considering, AVD, and you can move back and forth, and you can have multiple ones between there. That's the big difference of that and DEM, aside from the fact that we don't see any migration messaging out of them supporting that scenario.
Hey, we got another question in that we already answered, but I do think it's worth talking about. So Matt Lannon asked if we could set or retain user application defaults for browser, PDF, etc. And this is another real big pain point with USMT, is because by default, Microsoft makes it amazingly difficult to set certain application defaults, like your browser, for example. So if you have Chrome as your default browser in Windows 10, it really won't let you, even with USMT, push it inside of Windows 11. We do. So we have the ability to migrate all of the application custom defaults, including the ones that Microsoft has the special screen for. So that means browser, video, mail, things like that, all baked in by default. And if you want to do custom overrides where you say, hey, I want to make the new global default for everybody's PDF to be Adobe Reader, that's fine. You can do that as well. You have full control inside of the console.
Good question. We can do that with the file extensions, and we can do that even with FlexApp. Click to layer. If you've seen any of our demos on click to layer is a stub icon that makes it look like the app is in the environment, and so it's sitting there on the desktop after user login, and even that. And in our upcoming version that we ship next month, click to layer actually will, as an additional point, will allow you to specify the file types that you want to open with that application to change it in real time, even after user login on the desktop. So it's a new feature coming next month in our click to layer. Kristen, any other questions?
I think we're all caught up.
That's great. So we've got you know, a couple of things that the audience can look at. So we would love to schedule a one-on-one demo. Reach out to us at info@sales@anytime. You can get that $25 gift card that's going to come in handy for holiday shopping here soon by filling out one of these quick reviews, and that Amazon gift card will come directly as an e-gift certificate from Gartner as soon as you do that online. And also, you can try those FlexApp 1 packages today. Kristen, you want to bring it home?
Okay, if anyone else has any other questions, please email us at sales@liquidware.com or marketing@liquidware.com. Jason and Matt, thank you so much for your time today. Everyone, thank you for joining us. Keep an eye out in your email for a link to the recording and share it with your colleagues that are transitioning, migrating from Windows 10 to 11. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.